It all started in a way that you'd least expect. My name's Olivia, and I was just another face in the corporate world, grinding away my days until Jack walked into my life. He was a client for the firm I worked at, and our first meeting was anything but ordinary. There was this spark, an instant click, something that made the air crackle with energy whenever we were in the same room. "Olivia, right? Heard you're the wizard with numbers around here," Jack said on the day we met, his voice laced with a grin that I could hear before I saw it. "Wizard might be stretching it, but I know my way around them," I replied, trying to keep my composure. Who was this guy, coming in and throwing words like wizard around? Our conversations quickly moved from strictly business to personal interests, dreams, and eventually, our views on life. It was like finding a piece of myself that I didn't know was missing. Jack was charming, not just in a smooth talker kind of way, but genuinely caring. He listened, really listened, and that was rare. We started seeing each other outside of work, and each date felt like we were peeling back layers, revealing more and more of ourselves. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. "I can't believe you actually enjoy pineapple on pizza," I teased during one of our dinner dates. "Hey, don't knock it till you try it. It's the perfect combo of sweet and savory," Jack defended, his eyes lighting up with the kind of passion people reserve for sports teams or favorite bands. "That sounds like something only a madman would say," I shot back, laughter bubbling up from the pit of my stomach. Jack's laugh joined mine, filling the space around us with warmth. Those moments felt like we were in our little world, far away from the prying eyes and expectations of reality. 6 months flew by in a blur of shared smiles, whispered secrets, and dreams laid bare. Then, almost impulsively, Jack proposed. It was messy, unplanned, and in the middle of our favorite dive bar. No grand gestures or hidden photographers, just raw emotion. "Olivia, I know this isn't fancy. I don't have a ring yet, and we're surrounded by the smell of stale beer, but I can't imagine my life without you in it. Marry me?" His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. In that moment, I realized how deeply I had fallen. Yes, but if we're doing this, we're doing it our way. No fuss, just us. Our marriage was quick, just like our decision. We didn't need a big wedding. All that mattered was the promise we made to each other. We moved into Jack's place, a cozy little house that suddenly felt like home because we were together. Life with Jack was like living in a bubble, perfect and undisturbed, until Linda, his mom, decided it was her mission to burst it. Living next door, she had this uncanny timing of showing up right when we least expected or wanted her to. One lazy Sunday afternoon, as Jack and I were lounging on the couch, there was a knock on the door. Before we could even pretend we weren't home, Linda barged in like a hurricane on a mission. "Olivia, darling, how are you?" she bellowed, her voice carrying that peculiar mix of concern and accusation. "I'm good, Linda. Just enjoying the weekend," I replied, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. "Enjoying, huh? You know what would make weekends better? A grandchild running around," she shot back, her eyes darting between Jack and me, as if her mere gaze could impregnate me. Jack, ever the peacemaker, tried to lighten the mood. "Mom, we've talked about this. We're not in a rush." Linda wasn't having any of it. "Not in a rush? I had Jack when I was your age, Olivia. The clock is ticking, you know." Her words hung in the air, a constant reminder of the pressure she was piling on us. It wasn't just the occasional comments anymore, it was every single visit. Dinners were marred by her pointed questions and comparisons to her friends' children, who were apparently popping out grandchildren left, right, and center. One evening, she overstepped more than usual. We were at her place for what was supposed to be a peaceful dinner. The main course wasn't the only thing served, Linda dished out her ultimatum as well. "Olivia, I've been patient, but I need to know. Are you even capable of giving me grandchildren?" Linda's voice was sharp, each word slicing through the pretense of a familial meal. I was taken aback, anger boiling in my veins. "Linda, that's way out of line. We'll have kids when and if we want to. And when we're ready, not because you're demanding it. Jack finally found his voice, though it was softer than I'd hoped. Mom, Olivia's right. This isn't just about what you want. But Linda was relentless. Fine, if you won't do it for me, do it for yourselves. But I want you to get checked out. I need to know the problem isn't from your side. The nerve of her, as if bearing children was some family duty I was failing at. Jack looked at me, his eyes apologetic. Maybe you should, Liv. Just to get her off our backs. I agreed, but on one condition. Fine, but you're getting checked too, Jack. Fair's fair. Okay. Anything for peace, he conceded, though I could tell he was just as annoyed. The whole ordeal of getting tested was humiliating and invasive, not to mention completely unnecessary in my eyes. But it turned out to be an eye-opener in ways we hadn't anticipated. Jack's results came back, and the irony of the situation wasn't lost on us. The issue Linda was so concerned about, the delay in expanding our little family, stemmed from her precious son. The aftermath was a blend of vindication and sorrow. I wasn't sure how to feel. I wanted to rage at Linda, to throw her words back in her face, but I also saw the man I loved crumbling under the weight of his own imperfections. Linda's reaction was predictably unsupportive. Instead of rallying around her son, she doubled down on her blame game, pointing fingers at me for not being understanding enough, for not caring for Jack in his time of need. And Jack? Well, he wasn't the same. The light in his eyes dimmed, replaced by shadows of doubt and shame. He retreated into himself, leaving me to fend off Linda's barbs alone. Jack's struggle with the news about his fertility hit him harder than a freight train. Instead of facing it head-on, he looked for escape in booze, letting the bottles drown out his sorrows and shame. Nights turned into a blur, with him either passed out or staring into nothing, a whiskey bottle his only company. One evening, I couldn't just watch him spiral anymore. Jack, this ain't the way, you know. We gotta face this thing together, not let it tear us apart, I said, my voice a mix of frustration and worry. He just scoffed, the smell of alcohol heavy in his words. Face what, Olivia? That I'm a failure? That I can't give you kids? What's the damn point? It's not about that, Jack. It's about us, finding a way through. The doctors said it was unlikely, not impossible. Maybe see other doctors, explore other options. I tried to get through to him, but it was like talking to a wall. Other options? You mean raising some other guy's kid? That ain't gonna be my child, Olivia. How am I supposed to live with that? His words were like daggers, but I knew it was the booze and pain talking. Any child we raise would be ours, Jack. Ours. It doesn't matter how they come to us, I countered, but it was like I was speaking a foreign language to him. He just shook his head, sinking further into the couch and his despair. You don't get it, Liv. You'll never get it. That night was just the start. Jack began blowing off work, first with sick calls, then not even bothering. His job, once his pride, now seemed like just another burden. Linda, his mom, only added fuel to the fire. Olivia's not doing enough for you, Jack. A real wife would have you out of this slump, she accused one day, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. I had enough and shot back. Doing enough? I'm trying to keep us afloat here, Linda. But he needs more than just me yelling at him. He needs help, real help, not just your complaints. Linda glared at me, her voice icy. My son doesn't need some shrink. He needs his family. And a wife who's actually there for him. Her words stung, but I knew standing by Jack was all I was doing, even as he slipped further away, becoming a ghost in his own life. I tried again one night, the silence heavy between us. Jack, we can't go on like this. I can't watch you tear yourself apart. I love you, damn it. For a moment, there was a glimmer of the old Jack in his eyes. I don't know how to stop this, Liv. I'm lost. It was a crack in his armor, but promises made in desperation are fragile. And as time went on, the depth of Jack's descent became painfully clear. The last straw was his job. They fired him for showing up drunk, if he showed up at all. After that, he just lay on the couch all day, a shell of the man I married. Whenever I tried to reach out, to pull him back, he'd just head to Linda's, seeking refuge in the one place that never seemed to help. Days blurred into each other, each one a repeat of the last, Jack on the couch, lost in his own misery, and me, juggling 2 jobs just to keep us afloat. It felt like we were stuck in a never-ending storm with no way out. But then, something changed. It was a regular Thursday evening when I found out. I'd been feeling off for a while, sick in the mornings, and just not myself. On a whim, I picked up a pregnancy test. I remember standing in our cramped bathroom, waiting for the result, my heart hammering in my chest. When the positive sign showed up, I couldn't believe it. I was pregnant. I remember the moment I decided to tell Jack. He was on the couch, staring off into nothing, a half-empty bottle of beer in his hand. My heart was hammering in my chest, but I had this crazy hope that maybe, just maybe, this news would snap him out of whatever hole he'd fallen into. "Jack, I have something to tell you." I'm pregnant," I said, the words feeling both heavy and light at the same time. Jack's reaction was nothing like I'd hoped. He looked at me like I'd slapped him. "Pregnant? How the hell is that possible? You know what the doctor said about me." I tried to keep my voice steady, to explain the situation calmly. "Jack, the doctor said it was unlikely, not impossible. This baby is ours." But Jack wasn't having any of it. He got up, his anger palpable. "Ours? Don't give me that crap, Olivia. You've been cheating on me, haven't you? That's the only way this makes sense." Before I could even process what he was saying, Linda barged in, her timing as impeccable as ever. "What's all this shouting about?" she demanded. Jack was quick to fill her in, his words twisted by bitterness. "Olivia's pregnant. Claims it's mine, but we both know that's a lie." Linda turned on me, her eyes flashing with accusation. "You ungrateful little. After everything we've done for you, you go and betray my son like this?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Betray him? "Linda, I've been here, trying to make things work, even when Jack gave up. This baby is his, whether you like it or not." The argument spiraled from there, with both of them hurling accusations and demands. Linda, in her infinite wisdom, decided I should leave. "Get out of this house, Olivia. We don't need a liar and a cheat under this roof." I was so tired of the fighting, the accusations, the endless cycle of despair. So, I agreed. "Fine. I'll go. But not for you. For this baby, who deserves better than this mess." Jack didn't stop me. He didn't say a word as I walked out the door, my heart heavy, but my resolve strong. This baby was my glimmer of hope, and I was going to do everything in my power to protect it, to give it the life it deserved. Away from all the chaos, away from a love that had turned so toxic it was unrecognizable. Starting over wasn't easy, not by a long shot. There I was, pregnant, alone, and frankly, a bit scared. But there was this fire in me, too, a determination to make things right for the little one growing inside me. I moved into a small, cozy apartment. It wasn't much, but it was ours, mine and the baby's. I picked up extra shifts at work, anything to make sure we'd have what we needed. Nights were the hardest, though. It was just me and my thoughts, and sometimes, the silence was too loud. One evening, after a long day at work, I sat on the worn-out sofa, rubbing my belly, talking to the baby. "It's just you and me, kiddo. But we're gonna make it, you'll see. I'm gonna make sure of it." That's when the phone rang. It was my sister, Lucy. She'd been my rock through all of this. "Hey, Liv. How are you holding up?" Lucy's voice was always a balm, soothing and warm. "We're hanging in there. Some days are better than others," I admitted, not wanting to worry her too much. "Listen, Liv, you're not alone in this. Remember that. If you need anything, a break, someone to talk to, or just a night off from cooking, you call me, okay? Her words meant the world to me. Thanks, Luce. I really appreciate it. We talked a bit more about nothing in particular. Lucy always had a way of making me laugh, even when I felt like crying. After hanging up, I felt a little lighter, a bit more ready to face the world. As the weeks turned into months, I got to know every inch of that little apartment. I decorated a corner for the baby, putting together a makeshift nursery. It wasn't much, but it was filled with love. As my due date approached, I felt a mix of excitement and nerves. I was about to meet my baby, to start this new chapter for Real. And even though I was doing it on my own, I knew we'd be okay. Life as a single mom had its set of challenges, but me and my little boy, Max, we were doing all right. He was growing up fast, all smiles and curiosity, making all the tough times worth it. Then, one day, life decided to throw us another curveball. I was at the park with Max, pushing him on the swings, when I ran into a face from the past, Tina, an old friend of Jack's. Her expression was a mix of surprise and something else, maybe pity, when she saw us. Olivia? Wow, it's been ages. How are you holding up? Her voice was cautious, like she was walking on eggshells. We're managing, thanks. Max keeps me on my toes, I said, trying to keep the conversation light. Yeah, I heard about, well, everything. I'm sorry, Olivia. For what it's worth, Jack's been going through a rough patch, too. Tina's attempt at being diplomatic was awkward at best. Oh? I prompted, not sure I wanted to know but asking anyway. He got married again. Had another kid, but things didn't go well. There were problems with the baby. He was born, not quite healthy. And then Jack got into trouble for not paying support. It's a mess. Tina's words tumbled out in a rush. Hearing about Jack's troubles stirred up a storm of emotions in me. Part of me felt vindicated, seeing him face consequences for once. But there was no joy in it, especially hearing about another child caught in the middle of his mess. Life has a way of catching up with you, I guess, I said, my voice neutral. Tina nodded, awkwardly shifting from one foot to the other. Yeah, it does. Look, Olivia, I know it's none of my business, but, are you all right? After everything? I looked at Max, who was laughing, urging me to push him higher on the swings. We're more than all right, Tina. We've moved on. And we're happy, really happy. That night, as I tucked Max into bed, I thought about Jack and his other child. My heart ached for that little one, caught in a situation they didn't choose. I whispered a silent prayer for them, hoping they'd find some peace amidst the chaos. Life with Max was a whirlwind of school runs, soccer games, and endless questions. He was my little man, growing up too fast, and I was doing my best to keep up. Our routine was hectic but happy, until one day, a blast from the past turned our world upside down. It was just another day, me and Max doing our usual grocery run, when out of nowhere, Linda, my ex-mother-in-law, shows up. It was like bumping into a ghost from a past life I'd worked hard to forget. As soon as she saw us, her eyes lit up, especially when they landed on Max. Without a second thought, she swooped in, trying to hug him. Max, who's not used to strangers, especially not her, hid behind me. Olivia, let me see my grandson. He looks so healthy, not like the other one, Linda said, a twisted sort of pride in her voice that made my skin crawl. Back off, Linda. You've got no right to come here and make demands. Especially talking like that about a sick child. It's disgusting, I snapped, putting myself between her and Max. She huffed, her face all twisted up in anger. You can't keep me from him, Olivia. He's my grandson too. I have rights. Yeah? Well, it's funny you suddenly remember you've got a grandson now. And as for rights, you lost those the minute you sided with Jack, calling me every name under the sun. Forget it. You're not coming anywhere near Max. I shot back, every word laced with years of pent-up frustration. We left her standing there, fuming. But it didn't end at the store. Later that day, she called, her voice all sweet and poisonous at the same time. "Olivia, you're making a mistake. I'll sue if I have to. I want to see my grandson," Linda threatened, thinking she could bully me into submission. I held the phone away from my ear for a moment, taking a deep breath to steady myself. "You really want to go down that road, Linda? Because if we end up in court, I'll make sure everyone knows the kind of person you really are. How you treated me, how you talk about your other grandchild. You think a judge will look kindly on that?" There was silence on the line for a few beats, and I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. "You wouldn't dare," she finally hissed. "Try me, Linda. I've kept my mouth shut for too long. But I'm done playing nice. Max and we're doing just fine without you. So, you go ahead and try your luck in court. We'll see how far it gets you." After a moment, she hung up, and that was the last I heard from her. I wasn't sure if she believed I'd follow through or if the thought of her dirty laundry being aired in public was too much for her. Either way, Max and I were left in peace. As I tucked him into bed that night, I thought about how far we'd come and how much we'd overcome. "Everything's gonna be alright, buddy," I whispered, more to myself than to him. That night, I realized no matter what came our way, we'd face it together, just like we always had. And no one, not even Linda with her threats and bitterness, could take that away from us. Life after Linda's threat had been strangely peaceful. I'd braced for a storm that never came, and in its absence, Max and I found our rhythm again. That peace was shattered when Jack showed up out of the blue. It had been years since I last saw him, and here he was, standing at my door, looking worn and tired. "Olivia, can we talk?" Jack's voice was low, hesitant. I hesitated, my hand on the door, ready to close it on him and this part of my past. "Talk? After all this time, you just show up and want to talk?" I know I've got no right to ask anything of you. But I've been through a lot, and I've changed, Olivia. "I need help," he said, a hint of desperation creeping into his voice. "Changed? You think saying you've changed is enough? You walked away, Jack. You chose that path, not me. Max and we've built a life without you. Why should I let you back into it?" Jack looked down, unable to meet my gaze. "I'm not asking to come back like nothing happened. I don't know where else to go." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the shell of the man I once loved. It would have been easy to feel pity, to open the door and let him back in. But life had taught me better. "Jack, you need to understand something. It's not just about me anymore. There's Max to think about. And I won't let anyone hurt him or disrupt the life we have. You say you've changed, but I can't just take your word for it. You need to prove it, not for me, but for yourself." Jack nodded, a semblance of understanding dawning in his eyes. "I get it, Olivia. I really do. I'll try to do better. That's all anyone can ask, Jack. But for now, you need to leave. Max and I have a life, a good one. And I'm not ready to risk that." He took a step back, finally lifting his eyes to meet mine. "I understand. Take care of Max, Olivia. He deserves the best." "I will, Jack. I always have." Closing the door on Jack was like closing a chapter of my life I never thought I'd revisit. It was hard, but in that moment, I knew I'd made the right decision. Later, as I watched Max play in the backyard, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows over the lawn, I realized how far we'd come. We'd faced down ghosts from our past and stood our ground, stronger and more united than ever. "Mom, look," Max called, waving at me from his makeshift fort. I smiled, walking over to him. "What is it, buddy?" "Just wanted to show you the fort. It's our castle," he said, his eyes shining with pride. "Our castle, huh? I like the sound of that. It's our little kingdom, and we protect it together," I said, ruffling his hair. "Yeah, together. Max agreed, a big grin on his face. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I knew that no matter what the future held, we'd face it head-on, as a team. Our little family of 2 was a force to be reckoned with, built on love, resilience, and a firm stand against the challenges life threw our way. And that was all we needed.
I stride into the grand ballroom, the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses filling the air. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the lavish decor, but my heart feels as cold as ice. "I'll keep you safe forever, Millie," my husband Joel whispers, his voice trembling with emotion. He pulls my best friend into a tight embrace, and they both radiate happiness. A betrayal so raw it takes my breath away. Millie's family has spared no expense for this charity gala, their wealth on full display. Yet as her father Richard takes the stage to welcome the guests, the opulence fades into the background. Joel's declaration echoes in my mind, each word a dagger twisting deeper into my heart. I force a smile, stepping forward with feigned composure. Joel and Millie freeze as I approach, their faces drained of color. Without breaking my stride, I pluck the microphone from Richard's hand. "Good evening, everyone," I say, my voice steadier than I feel. "Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Ashton, Joel's wife." Gasps ripple through the crowd as Joel and Millie exchange panicked glances. Richard and Sylvia, Millie's mother, stare at the pair in disbelief, demanding answers with their eyes. "What's the meaning of this?" Richard bellows, his face flushed with anger. Joel stammers, unable to form a coherent response. Millie remains silent, her gaze fixed on the floor. "I think we all know the meaning," I say, my voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "But don't worry, I have all the evidence we need." The ballroom falls deathly silent, all eyes fixed on Joel and Millie. They shift uncomfortably, unable to meet anyone's gaze. "Well?" I prod, my voice dripping with disdain. "Aren't you two going to explain yourselves?" Joel clears his throat, his Adam's apple bobbing nervously. "Ashton, it's not what it looks like." A derisive laugh escapes my lips. "Not what it looks like? You were declaring your undying love for my supposed best friend, Joel. How else am I supposed to interpret that?" Millie finally speaks up, her voice trembling. "Ashton, please, let us explain." "Explain what?" I cut her off, my anger boiling over. "That you've been sleeping with my husband behind my back? That you've betrayed me in the most despicable way imaginable?" Richard and Sylvia gasp, their faces contorted with shock and disgust. "Is this true?" Richard demands, rounding on Millie and Joel. "Have you two been carrying on an affair?" Joel hangs his head, unable to meet Richard's furious gaze. Millie, however, lifts her chin defiantly. "Yes, it's true," she admits, her voice gaining strength. "Joel and I are in love, and we're not going to hide it anymore." A collective gasp ripples through the crowd, followed by hushed whispers and murmurs of disbelief. I can't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. "In love? You two are despicable. You've been lying and sneaking around behind my back for God knows how long." Sylvia steps forward, her lips pursed in a tight line. "Millie, how could you do this? To your best friend, no less." Millie shrugs, her eyes cold and empty. "Sometimes love just happens, Mother. You can't control who you fall for." "Love?" I spit out the word like venom. "This has nothing to do with love. This is about greed and selfishness. You've always been jealous of what Joel and I had, haven't you? Millie, you just couldn't stand to see someone else happy." Millie opens her mouth to respond, but I hold up a hand to silence her. "Save it. I'm done listening to your lies." I turn to face the crowd, my gaze sweeping over the shocked faces. The truth is, these two have been carrying on a sordid affair for months, and I have all the proof. I can still vividly recall the day Millie and I became best friends in high school. She was the new girl, shy and awkward, struggling to fit in. I took her under my wing, and we quickly became inseparable. Little did I know that kindness would come back to haunt me years later. After graduation, Millie and I remained close, even after I met and fell in love with Joel. He was charming, successful, and seemed to adore me. We got married straight out of college, much to my mother Vivian's delight. She had always worried about me being too focused on work at her restaurant. At first, Joel was the perfect husband, attentive, loving, and supportive of my dreams. But slowly, things began to change. He started working later nights, claiming he had important client meetings. Our once passionate intimacy dwindled to almost nothing. When I brought up the idea of starting a family, Joel always had an excuse. His career was taking off, we needed to save more money, the timing wasn't right. His evasiveness should have been a red flag, but I was blinded by my love for him. Looking back, the signs were all there. The expensive gifts I'd find in his gym bag, the lingering scent of an unfamiliar perfume on his clothes. But Millie assured me I was just being paranoid, that Joel adored me. "He's probably just working hard to give you the life you deserve," she'd say with that innocent smile of hers. It wasn't until I stumbled across those receipts that the truth finally hit me. Dozens of charges for luxurious hotel stays, expensive jewelry, all addressed to Millie. My best friend and my husband carrying on an affair right under my nose. The betrayal was almost too much to bear. But I knew I couldn't confront them until I had undeniable proof. So I hired a private investigator and started documenting their every move. The evidence piled up quickly. Photos of them kissing passionately outside upscale restaurants, text messages dripping with desire and longing. Each new piece of information was like a dagger to my heart, but I remained outwardly calm and collected. Finally, after weeks of meticulous planning, I was ready to expose their deceit to the world. My lawyer, Lance, assured me I had more than enough evidence to publicly humiliate them both. "This is going to get ugly," he warned me. "Are you sure you're ready for that?" I took a deep breath and nodded, my resolve unwavering. They brought this on themselves. It's time they faced the consequences of their actions. With the evidence in hand, I knew it was time to take action. Lance had advised me to document every sordid detail of Joel and Millie's affair, leaving no stone unturned. "The more proof we have, the better," he had said. "We need to bury them under the weight of their own deception." So I enlisted the help of a private investigator, a stone-faced woman named Janice, who had a knack for blending into the background. Together, we followed Joel and Millie's every move, recording their trysts with meticulous detail. It was sickening work, watching the man I had once loved so deeply betray me in the most intimate ways. But I forced myself to remain detached, channeling my hurt into a burning desire for revenge. Janice would trail them to upscale restaurants, where they'd share candlelit dinners and hold hands across the table like lovesick teenagers. Other times, she'd stake out luxurious hotels, documenting their arrivals and departures with time-stamped photos. "They're certainly not shy about flaunting their affair," Janice remarked one night as we reviewed the latest batch of surveillance images. I clenched my jaw, anger simmering just below the surface. "Good. Let them get cocky. It'll make their downfall that much sweeter." With each passing day, the evidence mounted, incriminating text messages, credit card statements detailing lavish gifts, even grainy video footage of them locked in passionate embraces. It was more than enough to bury them both in a tidal wave of scandal. But I knew I had to be patient, biding my time until the perfect opportunity presented itself. Millie's family was hosting another one of their high-profile charity galas in a few weeks, the same event where Joel had so brazenly declared his love for her. "That's it," I told Lance, a vindictive smile spreading across my face. "That's where we'll make our move." He nodded slowly, studying the stack of evidence before us. "Are you sure about this, Ashton? Once we pull the trigger, there's no going back." I didn't hesitate. They made their choices. Now it's time for them to face the consequences. With the date set, I turned my focus to planning every last detail of my revenge. Joel and Millie thought they could betray me and get away with it. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. With the evidence securely in hand, I turned my attention to planning the perfect revenge. Joel and Millie thought they could betray me and get away with it. They were sorely mistaken. As I pored over the sordid details of their affair, flashes of memory assaulted me. Times when Millie had manipulated me for her own gain, always playing the innocent victim while she stabbed me in the back. Like the time she accidentally spilled red wine all over my white dress at her cousin's wedding, just because the groomsmen had complimented me on how beautiful I looked. Or when she convinced me to loan her money for a business opportunity, only to blow it all on a lavish vacation with some guy she'd just met. I should have seen the signs then, but I was too blinded by our so-called friendship to recognize her true colors. Well, not anymore. With each incriminating photo, every damning text message, my resolve only strengthened. These two deserved to have their lives torn apart, just as they had so callously destroyed my marriage and our friendship. I knew I had to plan my strike carefully, crafting a scenario that would maximize their humiliation while ensuring I remained firmly on the moral high ground. A public shaming was in order, but it had to be executed flawlessly. That's when the idea hit me. Millie's family was hosting another one of their opulent charity galas in a few weeks, an event guaranteed to draw the elite of our social circle. What better stage to expose Joel and Millie's sordid affair than the very place their betrayal had begun? A slow, vindictive smile spread across my face as I envisioned the looks of shock and horror on their faces when the truth was finally laid bare. I could already picture Millie's carefully cultivated facade crumbling to pieces, her false charm and grace shattered in an instant. But I couldn't rely on shock value alone. No, I needed to hit them where it really hurt. Their reputations, their careers, their entire way of life. A good old-fashioned public shaming was the only way to ensure they suffered the consequences of their actions. So I got to work, meticulously planning every last detail, from compiling the most damning pieces of evidence into an incriminating slideshow to discreetly planting an anonymous tip with the local gossip rag, ensuring their downfall would be broadcast far and wide. "You're playing a dangerous game, Ashton," Lance cautioned me during one of our strategy sessions. "Are you sure you want to go down this road?" I met his gaze steadily, unflinching. They made their choices, Lance. Now it's time for them to pay the price. With each passing day, my anticipation grew, like a coiled snake ready to strike. Joel and Millie had no idea what was coming for them, but soon enough, they'd learn the true consequences of betrayal. The night of the charity gala arrived, and I could barely contain my anticipation as I slipped into my sleek black dress. Months of careful planning had led to this moment, and I was determined to savor every second of Joel and Millie's downfall. As I stepped into the opulent ballroom, my gaze immediately found them standing together, laughing and sipping champagne like they didn't have a care in the world. Millie's fake smile was brighter than ever, her arm looped through Joel's in a sickening display of affection. My blood boiled at the sight, but I forced myself to remain calm and collected. Let them enjoy their last few moments of blissful ignorance. It wouldn't last long. The event kicked off with the usual pomp and circumstance, Millie's father taking the stage to deliver a long-winded speech about the importance of charitable giving. I tuned him out, focusing instead on the meticulously prepared slideshow sitting innocently on my tablet. Finally, Richard wrapped up his remarks and introduced the evening's keynote speaker. As the man took the podium, I made my move, smoothly slipping behind the curtain and connecting my tablet to the projection system. With a few taps, the ballroom's massive screens flickered to life, displaying the first damning image. A candid shot of Joel and Millie locked in a passionate kiss outside a fancy restaurant. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd as more photos appeared in rapid succession, each one more incriminating than the last. On the stage, the keynote speaker faltered, his words dying on his lips as he realized something was terribly wrong. I stepped out from behind the curtain, a satisfied smile playing across my lips as I took in the scene of utter chaos unfolding before me. Joel and Millie were frozen in horror, their faces drained of color as the shocking evidence of their affair was laid bare for all to see. Text messages filled with lust and longing, credit card statements detailing lavish gifts, even grainy video captures of their trysts at high-end hotels. It was all there, projected in vivid detail for the entire crowd to witness. Millie's parents, Richard and Sylvia, looked like they were about to be sick, their expressions twisted into masks of disgust and betrayal. Around them, the once dignified guests erupted into a frenzy of whispers and gasps, their scandalized tones echoing off the vaulted ceilings. As the slideshow cycled through its final few images, I stepped forward, basking in the stunned silence that had fallen over the ballroom. "Well?" I called out, my voice ringing with contempt. "Don't you two have anything to say for yourselves?" Joel opened and closed his mouth wordlessly, like a fish gasping for air. Millie, however, found her voice, her eyes blazing with fury. "You bitch!" she spat. any trace of her false charm evaporating in an instant. "How dare you do this to us?" A harsh laugh escaped my lips. "How dare I? You two were the ones carrying on a sordid affair behind my back. You brought this on yourselves." My gaze shifted to Richard and Sylvia, taking in their devastated expressions. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way," I said, my tone softening ever so slightly. "But they gave me no choice. The truth had to come out." With that, I turned on my heel and strode out of the ballroom, leaving a wake of chaos and shattered reputations in my wake. The cold satisfaction of revenge coursed through my veins. Joel and Millie had finally gotten what they deserved. In the aftermath of my explosive revelation, the fallout was swift and merciless. Joel and Millie found themselves cast out from the very social circles they'd once dominated, their reputations in tatters. I'll never forget the look on Richard's face as he confronted his daughter in the wake of the scandal. His eyes blazed with a fury I'd never seen before, his usual cool composure shattered. "How could you, Millie?" he shouted, his voice trembling with rage and humiliation. "How could you betray your own best friend like this?" Millie, for once, was at a loss for words. Her perfectly cultivated mask had cracked, revealing the selfish, deceitful creature lurking beneath. "Daddy, she stammered, her eyes darting wildly around the room as the weight of her actions finally sank in. "I never meant to hurt anyone." Richard let out a harsh, derisive laugh. "Never meant to hurt anyone? You carried on an affair with a married man, Millie. You lied and betrayed your closest friend for your own selfish desires." Sylvia stood off to the side, silent tears streaming down her face. The humiliation and shame were etched into every line of her once regal features. As for Joel, he seemed to shrink in on himself, a broken shell of the man he'd once been. The confident, charismatic persona he'd so carefully crafted was gone, replaced by a pathetic, sniveling coward. He tried to approach me in the days that followed, his eyes pleading for forgiveness, for understanding. But I shut him down at every turn, my heart as cold and unyielding as steel. "Please, Ashton," he begged, his voice thick with emotion. "I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but I still love you, I swear it." I fixed him with an icy glare, my lips curling into a contemptuous sneer. "Love? You don't know the first thing about love, Joel. What you had with Millie was nothing more than a sordid fling built on lies and selfishness." His shoulders slumped in defeat, and for a fleeting moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. The gossip rags, of course, had a field day with the scandal. Tawdry headlines screamed from every checkout counter, breathlessly recounting the sordid details of Joel and Millie's undoing. Wealthy heiress caught in salacious affair, corporate hotshot secret sex life exposed. Overnight, they became the laughingstock of the city, their once enviable social status reduced to a cruel punchline. Joel lost his high-powered job, his employers unwilling to weather the storm of bad publicity. Millie, meanwhile, found herself ostracized from the very circles she'd once ruled with an iron fist, her family's reputation left in tatters. As for me, I reveled in their misery, savoring every ounce of their well-deserved karma. The hurt and betrayal I'd felt seemed like a distant memory, replaced by a sense of vindictive triumph. I'd won. They'd lost everything. And not a single part of me felt even the slightest pang of remorse. With Joel and Millie's lives in ruins, it was finally time for me to move on and start anew. The divorce proceedings were swift and brutal, thanks to an ironclad prenuptial agreement that ensured I walked away with a sizable settlement. As I sorted through the paperwork, putting the final nail in the coffin of my failed marriage, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief wash over me. The weight of Joel's betrayal had been lifted, replaced by a newfound sense of freedom and possibility. "You did the right thing, sweetheart," my mother Vivian assured me as we shared a celebratory glass of wine. "That snake got exactly what he deserved." I nodded, taking a sip of the rich, full-bodied red. "I know, and as much as it hurts, I'm glad it's over. I can finally move on with my life." Vivian reached across the table, giving my hand a gentle squeeze. "So, what's next for you? The world is your oyster now, you know." A slow smile spread across my face as an idea began to take shape in my mind. "You know, I've always dreamed of opening my own bakery, a cozy little place with fresh-baked treats and strong coffee." Vivian's eyes lit up with excitement. "That's perfect. You've always been such a natural in the kitchen." The more I thought about it, the more the idea appealed to me. After years of working in my family's stuffy, high-end restaurant, the thought of running my own laid-back bakery was like a breath of fresh air. With my mind made up, I wasted no time in setting my plan into motion. I used a portion of the settlement money to secure a prime location in a trendy part of town and got to work transforming the space into my vision of bakery perfection. The weeks flew by in a whirlwind of painting, baking, and taste testing as I poured every ounce of my energy into making my dream a reality. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the big day arrived. The soft chime of the bell above the door signaled the arrival of my first customer, a wide-eyed young woman who eagerly approached the glass display case. "What can I get for you today?" I asked, a genuine smile spreading across my face. As she placed her order, I felt a surge of pride and excitement. This was it, the start of my new life, unburdened by the shadows of betrayal and deceit. In the months that followed, my little bakery became a neighborhood staple, drawing in crowds with its tempting array of freshly baked goods and warm, welcoming atmosphere. I'd never been happier, surrounding myself with the simple pleasures of good food and friendly faces. Whenever I felt a twinge of sadness creeping in, I'd remind myself of how far I'd come. I'd survived the ultimate betrayal and emerged stronger, more resilient than ever before. Joel and Millie's actions, as despicable as they were, had ultimately set me free to pursue my true passion. And as I looked around at the bustling bakery filled with laughter and the rich aroma of freshly baked bread, I knew I'd made the right choice. This was my new beginning, and nothing, not even the ghosts of my past, could take that away from me.